When we got that letter from my mother's own cousin, just picture yourself how my father felt. My father is a very strong man. God should give him just gesund to continue whatever he's doing. My father burst out in tears. At that moment, he felt that everything is gone. What will he do now? His son is in cellar. My brother is soon becoming 7 years old also. What will be further? The Rebbe did not give us a bracha to leave Russia. My father goes to the Avir. I'm sure you heard about Avir. Avir was the agency that you have to get permission to leave Russia. He comes there and brings the papers. The Goro, who was sitting at the desk, took the papers, ripped in front of my father, threw it in garbage, and says to him, Natanchik, ti tut umriosh. You're going to die here. You'll never go to leave Russia. And threw him away from the office. Like this passed by a year and a half. After a year and a half, February of 1970, we got a telegram from the same Avir station. Pay 36 rubles and leave Russia within 7 days. We did not know what happened. We did not know nothing what happened. We just know only one thing. We got permits to leave Russia. We had permission to change rubles for dollars. We got $400, $100 per person. My father, my mother, me and my brother. 2 suitcases. Goodbye, good luck, never again. And we left Russia. We came to Vienna. We were in Vienna for 3 days. We went to Austria because Russia did not let us to go direct to Israel because there is no diplomatic. And from there we came to Israel. My father settled in Chabad. He lives there till now, Baruch Hashem, together with my mother. We had a very rough time. My father did not know Hebrew. My father was working as a night guard for Shapiro Wine Company. My father worked very hard. We had no money to buy food. My father was buying 1 chicken for a month, to have a quarter of chicken for every Shabbos, to have just a fleishike soup, to have a soup which actually should be fleishike for Shabbos. We used to buy vegetables from yesterday, bread from yesterday, everything with the half price. We should be able to survive. My mother was Baruch Hashem pregnant with my sister, and it was a rough time. The day after Lag Baimer, my sister was born. Now Baruch Hashem, we have a big family, 3 children, but my father had no money to eat. Came the end of Menachemov, Elul time. My father comes home with a great simcha, and he shows my mother, here is the ticket that I'm going to the Rebbe. And my mother looked at my father and says, from where is the money? And my father says, you remember, every day you were eating, the children were eating, I was starving, I was drinking water. And every day I put away 2 shekels. That time was liras. I was putting away 2 liras to be able to buy a ticket to go to the Rebbe. My mother burst out in tears. My mother burst out in tears. And my mother says, and what is that son that was sitting in cellar for a year and a half? He doesn't deserve to see the Rebbe? And my father says, I have no place where to borrow money. And my mother says, I have money. My mother went and sold one of her jewelries. And with that money, she bought a ticket for me to go to see the Rebbe. We came to the Rebbe, my father and myself, for Tishri Tovshin Lamed Aleph. That is September of 1970. And the first place that we went to my mother's cousin. That's the only relative we had in Crown Heights. And we came into my mother's cousin. Hope, my father saw for the first time a piece of meat that he could eat, kosher piece of meat. In Israel, there was no meat. In Russia, forget about meat. And we said, my father asked just one question. Explain to me what's going on with the picture. That was my father's only thing that he had in his mind. And my mother's cousin walks over to the china closet and takes out the picture and gives it to my father. And my father says to him, I don't understand. You gave the picture to Zaidi. Zaidi did not say nothing. How do you have the picture? Says to him, my mother's cousin, the following. I came to the Rebbe when you sent me the picture. Erev in Kippur, the Rebbe used to give lekach. And I passed by the Rebbe, and when I took the lekach for me, I asked the Rebbe, this is a picture of my cousins. They are stuck in Russia. I need a brocha, they should leave Russia. The Rebbe took the picture, looked on the picture, did not said nothing, walked into his room, opened up the drawer of his table. I'm sure you can see the pictures of the Rebbe's table, and put in the picture there. And the picture was in that drawer for 1 year. A year later, Erev in Kippur, when my mother's cousin passed by the Rebbe to take lekach, the Rebbe says to him, 1 second. The Rebbe walked in back to his room, took the picture and gave it to him and says, Ich darf die Bild mehr nicht haben. I don't need any more that picture. That was an Erev in Kippur, 4 months before we left Russia. Then at Erev in Kippur, before we left Russia, as the Rebbeinu decides everything with Russian in Kippur, what's with this person, then the Rebbe gave the picture back and says, I don't need any more that picture. And 4 months later, we left Russia. When I say the Haggadah, I add one more paragraph. Everybody says, correct? That's what we say. If God will not take us out from Egypt, we will all be there. I add one more thing, and I say it always to my children and all the Pesach Seders that I made throughout the years for the Russian Jews. For 44 years, I made Seders for tens of thousands of Russian Jews. Tens of thousands. And I said to them only one thing. Rabbi, as aviseinu mir Moskva, harionu v'neinu v'Stalin brosha. I feel gratitude that the Rebbe took me out from Russia. And because of that, me and my wife dedicated our life to be shluchim of the Rebbe. And thank God the Rebbe gave us the opportunity, the ability to try to pay him back. And to be shluchim, to make people closer to Torah mitzvahs. And throughout these 44 years, I'm not going to share everything what I did. Just one small thing. I did 7,000 brisen. The oldest was 78 years old. I'm not talking here babies 8 days. This is just one thing. And that is how I feel, and my wife, how we paying back for that great miracle that we left Russia. And as the Rebbe said to my cousin, to my mother's cousin, Ich darf die Bild mehr nicht haben. I don't need anymore that picture. Fast forward, 2 weeks later, we're going into the Rebbe Yechidas. We're going into the Rebbe on a private audience. With the Rosh Hashanah in Kippur. The most precious time, Baklal Yisrael. Everybody's praying with the Rosh Hashanah in Kippur. And the Rebbe finds time to see my father and myself. I just want to give you one more thing. When I was in the cellar, at night, my grandfather always showed, who was originally saying to my father why he wears a beard. My grandfather never touched his beard. He was in Russia. He was in the army. He got in the back, a bullet from the Nazis hit him. He survived. And when he came to the Rebbe, and he says to the Rebbe just one word. He was at that time 72 years old. And he says to the Rebbe says to him, Rabbi Yehuda, what are you planning to do? He says, Rebbe, I'm an old man. I fought in the war. I fought in Russia. I came here. Now I'm in Israel. I want to relax. You know what the Rebbe says to my grandfather? Rabbi Yehuda, warf da ruhig den Passport. Throw away your passport. Start working. That was what the Rebbe said to my grandfather. And my grandfather worked till 84 years old. Thank God. till he passed away. But my Zayd, the Rebbe says to my grandfather, Rabbi Yude, warf da ruhig den passport. Throw away your passport. Don't look on your passport, how old are you? I'm not interested to know how old are you. Start working. And he was one of the people who worked together with Rabbi Lifshitz in Yad Vashem, in Russia, in Israel, in the 70s, to work with the Georgian Jews and the Russian Jews to bring them closer to Torah mitzvahs. This was who my grandfather was. But in Russia, I had a privilege. I had a privilege to take a walk in the outside of the house from the cellar, just to go outside and have some fresh air. But it was a condition. I had to know 2 lines of Tanya Bahar. And every single day I used to learn 2 lines of Tanya Bahar. That was 12 lines a week. And on Shabbos I had to say all the 12 lines together. And Baruch Hashem, I finished a lot of Tanya Baal Peh, Baruch Hashem. When we walked into the Rebbe Yechidus, I remember like now, I was a child, and I pushed myself straight to the Rebbe's table. My father, like freezed, and he stood by the door. The Rebbe looked at a piece of paper that my father wrote about me, my mother, and the brother and the younger sister. And the Rebbe says to my father, started to speak to him about Russia. What's going on here, what's going on there, how many Jews are going to having kosher food, how many Jews. And my father walked out after being 10 minutes talking to the Rebbe. He says, the Rebbe knows what's going on in Moscow better than me. He knows every single detail. Who goes to shul, doesn't go to shul, who eats kosher, who needs tefillin, who needs a mezuzah. The Rebbe knows every single detail what's going on in Moscow. And then the Rebbe looks at me. And the Rebbe says to me, which language do you speak? I said Yiddish. That's the only language I spoke. Russian I understood. I learned Russian in America. Because in Russia, I spoke only Yiddish. In Israel, I spoke Hebrew. In America, I learned Russian and English. Then you understand how my English is good, how my Russian is good. Just by the way, when I was going with Mordechai last year, I called up somebody wish my happy anniversary. Yeah, that person says, I remember when you used to make for me the Pesach Seder in 1979 in Rubber Towers in East Orange. You spoke very well. 90% Yiddish, 10% Russian. This is how I started to work. I understood Russian, but I did not speak. Anyway, and the Rebbe says to me, which language? I said Yiddish. Says the Rebbe, which Gemara are you learning? I said, I'm learning Gemara Chevel. And the Rebbe tested me in Gemara Chevel. Then the Rebbe says to me, I heard that you learned Tanya Baal Peh. Start saying chapter 4. And I started to say chapter 4 in front of the Rebbe until the Rebbe stopped me. Then the Rebbe says to me, do you have tzitzis? I said to the Rebbe, yes. Says the Rebbe, and how many tzitzis do you have? I said 4. Says the Rebbe, and how many strings there is in each tzitzah? I said 8. This is a conversation from the Rebbe to a child who is 10 years old. The Rebbe did not find anything better what to do. Between Rosh and Kippur, just speak to a child who is 10 years old, find out how many tzitzis he has. Says the Rebbe, and how much is 4 times 8? I said 32. Says the Rebbe, and what is 32? I did not know. I was a child, 10 years old. I look at my father, I remember like now, standing facing the Rebbe, my father stands this by the right, and I look at my father, and my father gives me that look, like he says to me, in front of the Rebbe, I'm not going to talk. I'm silent. He gave me that look that I understood. You are on your own, baby. And I looked at the Rebbe like, I'm surrendering. But the Rebbe's Ahavas Yisrael, the Rebbe's love, the Rebbe's smile, the Rebbe's eyes, only the Rebbe has. And the Rebbe looked at me and says to me the following. I was first of all say it in Yiddish because that is the way the Rebbe spoke to me. And that is the holy words of the Rebbe. 32 badait lev. 32 means lev. Wenn man tragt tzitzes, hat man a gute Herz, a Yiddische Herz und a Chassidische Herz. When you wear tzitzes, you have a good heart, a Jewish heart, and a Chassidic heart. And the Rebbe soll helfen. Du sollst haben a gute Herz, a Yiddische Herz, and a Chassidische Herz. And God Almighty should help that you should have a good heart, a Jewish heart, and a Hasidic heart. That was the first chiddush that the Rebbe gave me a bracha when I was 10 years old. And that bracha I'm giving to all of you today also. Be very careful with the mitzvah of tzitzis. Our children should have tzitzis. We should have tzitzis. We should be bahadur. And make sure to check the tzitzis every single day. Because if we don't have Torah too, yes, according to Shulchan Aruch, if it's Gdei Aniva, not Gdei Aniva, you can have 50 fun terutzim. But if it's not Torah too, you're missing well. It becomes loy, it becomes it becomes chavtes, it becomes chavzayin, chavches, but it's not the way. It's not Torah too. You can have a 51 terutzim from all the Shulchan Aruchs together. But you're missing the heart. The heart is Torah too. We have to check that we have Torah to tzitzis every single day and to wear them and to have mehuderdike tzitzis, kosher tzitzis. And then we have the bracha what the Rebbe says: a good heart, a Yiddish heart, and a Chassidish heart. Did the ladies heard me or not? The most important is for the ladies that. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because the ladies are making sure that the children are wearing tzitzis. And the children have a hobby. They're eating tzitzis. Every child loves to eat the tzitzis. And when they're eating the tzitzis, they have two problems. Number one, they don't say a bracha on the tzitzis. And number two, it becomes no more Torah too. The mothers, please make sure that your children are wearing kosher tzitzis. And through that, you will have the bracha of good hearts, Yiddish hearts, and Chassidish hearts. Amen. Amen.